not openly, but we later admitted, yeah, so Paul's written a good one there, I better get going. And I would similarly, that's a bit good, right.
At 82, Paul doesn't hide much anymore. He's lived through global fame, personal loss, and the collapse of the greatest band in history. But now, he's finally opening up about the people who let him down, the friends who turned their backs, and the bands he'll never look at the same again. These are the 5 rock legends Paul McCartney never forgave. Eric Clapton and Cream, the guitar god who disappeared. Paul once called Eric Clapton a hurricane in a Hendrix suit. He respected his craftsmanship. Eric didn't just play guitar, he felt it. And when George asked Clapton to play Lead On While My Guitar Gently Weeps, Paul was thrilled. He thought it marked a new beginning, maybe a bridge between Beatles' brilliance and blues virtuosity. But after that legendary session, Paul felt something shift. He later told a friend, "It was like he ghosted the entire band, but mostly me." In the years that followed, Paul invited Clapton to collaborate multiple times. A blues rock trio with Ringo, a post-Beatles charity gig in Montreux, even a secret proposal for a 1977 guitar versus piano tour. Eric's answer? None. Just silence. It wasn't just about saying no, it was the coldness. And when George passed away in 2001, Paul expected warmth at the tribute concert. Instead, Clapton made sure Paul was the last-minute add-on, reportedly telling organizers, "We're here for George, not a Beatles encore." Paul didn't protest. He played his part. But when he walked off stage that night, he told his assistant, "Eric mourned George, but he buried me." The Rolling Stones, rivals with a smile. It started as a playful rivalry. Beatles versus Stones. Pop versus grit. Mick and Keith, the rebels. John and Paul, the romantics. But underneath the friendly banter, tension brewed. In the 60s, Paul helped the Stones get their first big hit, "I Want to Be Your Man." He even played tambourine on a few studio sessions. But as the decades rolled on, Paul felt the warmth grow cold, especially for Mick. In interviews, Jagger would say things like, "We played rock and roll. The Beatles played pop poetry." Paul laughed it off, at least at first. But after September 11th, when Paul wanted to gather global rock icons for a piece through Music Anthem, he personally called Mick, pitched the idea, a global single, 1 verse each, unity over ego. Mick's response? "One Beatles reunion is enough for a lifetime." Then click, it stung. Not because of rejection, Paul's had that before, but because of the tone, the smugness. Years later, Paul joked in a Howard Stern interview, "The Stones? Great band, but they're a blues cover band. We were doing symphonies with sitars." The audience laughed, but beneath the humor was a wound. Bob Dylan, the protest poet who pushed back. Paul admired Dylan as a lyricist, the way he turned rage into rhythm, how his words challenged presidents, not just parents. When the Beatles met Dylan in 1964, he introduced them to marijuana and possibly to vulnerability. Paul later said, "Bob made me want to write about the soul, not just the sound." In the 1980s, Paul tried to organize a global live Aid-style peace concert, Harmony for Humanity. He wanted Bob Dylan front and center. Dylan's reply was short and brutal. "I don't do anthems for politicians." Weeks later, Dylan went on air and said, "These peace shows are performance art for rock stars who've run out of albums." He didn't say Paul's name, but he didn't need to. Paul never responded publicly, but he shelved the entire project. Privately, he told Linda, "He made me feel like I was selling peace like perfume." They never spoke again. David Bowie, the genius who never reached back. Paul and Bowie came from different planets. Paul, the melodic craftsman. Bowie, the shape-shifting alien. They weren't enemies, but they were never allies either. Paul respected Bowie's bravery, the costumes, the personas, the reinvention. In the 90s, Paul recorded a track called Glass Soul. He imagined it as a duet, piano from Paul, poetry from Bowie. The demo was sent over. Weeks later, Bowie's manager returned it unopened, with a note. "This sounds like a retirement anthem." Paul said nothing, but he shelved the song forever. Later, when Bowie played a surprise London gig, Paul showed up backstage. David greeted him politely, distant but respectful. That night, Paul scribbled in his notebook, "Bowie's brilliance is blinding, but it never warmed me." When Bowie died in 2016, Paul posted a short tribute. He was a star among stars. No interviews, no quotes, no tears. Sometimes grief isn't loud. Sometimes it's a locked door that never opened. John Lennon, the brother who broke his heart. Paul will never say he hated John, because he didn't. He loved him, but no man ever wounded him deeper. They were brothers, bandmates, opposites in harmony. When the Beatles broke up, Paul felt lost. He tried to reach out. John responded through music. 1971's "How Do You Sleep" was a grenade. The only thing you done was yesterday, and since you've gone, you're just another day. Paul cried the first time he heard it. Linda found him in the studio. He whispered, "Why did he hate me that much?" Paul never retaliated in song. Instead, he sent letters, tried to mend what fame had shattered. By 1979, the Cold War was thawing. They spoke occasionally, joked about a Beatles kids book, even discussed playing on Saturday Night Live as a prank. Then, in December 1980, everything ended with a gunshot. Paul heard the news at home. He didn't cry in public, but he stopped writing for months. "There is so much left unsaid," he later told a biographer. And now it never will be. For Paul, these weren't feuds. They were heartbreaks, losses of friendship, of respect, of potential. He doesn't hold on to hate, but he remembers, because every melody we love was born from a memory he couldn't forget. And sometimes, that memory is pain. Which story surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments below. Subscribe for more untold stories of rock and roll. Thanks for watching.